Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome you again to this press conference to discuss the latest developments and to respond to the questions of our colleagues, the journalists, and that comes under the framework of our continued communication with the media, as we have always been doing. Over the past few days, we received many questions as to the reopening of several industries and public facilities, namely mosques and churches. We in the government didn't find it easy at all to close and suspend prayers at mosques and churches over the past period. However, we had to take this measure upon the recommendations of the medical committees to safeguard the health and safety of citizens and to preserve the human soul, which comes on top of anything else. This measure, indeed, has been adopted by several other countries, be it Arab, Islamic, or otherwise. Today, we had a meeting chaired by the Prime Minister, Dr. Al-Razzaz, to discuss this matter. And upon the recommendations of the National Epidemiology Committee, the recommendations that were submitted through the Minister of Health to the Ministers' Council. And in the light of that, it's been decided during the meeting to reopen churches and mosques as of Friday, next Friday. I don't mean tomorrow, I mean Friday, June the 5th. And that would be according controls that will safeguard public safety. As you know, Friday is the day when we enforce comprehensive lockdown. However, we are considering modifying the measures so citizens will be able to walk to mosques either during the period of noon prayers or throughout the day. And this decision shall be taken over the coming few days. We have the Minister of Awqaf, Dr. Al-Khalaila, and the President of the Jordan Churches Council, Archbishop Atallah, and they are going to talk to us about the details of this matter. And we have His Excellency, Dr. Saad Jaber, who will talk to us about the updates of the pandemic and other related issues. Before I give the floor to their excellencies and to Reverend the Archbishop, I'd like to stress again that the government and the competent authorities are considering and studying the rest of the recommendations submitted by the Epidemiology Committee in relation to reopening more industries, changing curfew hours, reopening more industries like nurseries, gyms, restaurants, and cafes. Such decisions will be announced once taken. I would like to mention that reopening more industries will unfortunately mean that there will be more cases unless we rigidly follow the preventive measures and maintain physical distances. Reopening more industries does not mean that the threat has declined or ceased. Rather, it means that we need to coexist with this health situation that seems to be lingering, and we cannot continue to have complete shutdowns. We received several questions today. We responded to some of them already, but they are about the reopening of public departments and the courts resuming their business on May the 31st. On May the 31st, the statutory periods and terms that were suspended under Defense Order number 5 will resume. And this is not related to the civil servants rejoining their workplaces, which should be on May the 26th, and that would be over 3 periods and 3 stages. And that will be according to the circular and the guidelines issued by the Civil Service Bureau. The instructions related to them rejoining their work will remain as is and will not change. As for compliance, the compliance of public departments with preventive measures, we've seen significant level of compliance, in fact, but in fact, however, we received complaints about a few departments that have not been compliant. We would like to stress that we will have close oversight over compliance, and there will be penalties, administrative penalties against institutions that do not comply. To that end, we have assigned a public safety supervisor who will follow up and oversee the compliance and adherence with preventive measures at every public department. And we'd like to urge citizens to comply with preventive measures, more putting on masks, following all the mentioned safety measures, and follow all of this as they check with any of the public departments and enterprises, private enterprises. And again, we'd like to stress that the electronic platform بخدمتكم receives the citizens' reports about any violation of preventive measures at public departments. There are questions we received from our colleagues, the journalists, and I shall address them after my colleagues take the floor, and then we'll give you the chance for your questions. Again, I'd like to welcome you, and I'd like to welcome the Excellency Azriv and the Archbishop, and now I'll give the floor to the Minister of Awqaf. In the name of God, most merciful, most compassionate, in God, peace be upon Prophet Muhammad, his companions, family, and followers. As mentioned by His Excellency Mr. Amjad, as of June the 5th, we will reopen mosques, and that would be the first step. The first step will only include Friday prayers, because Friday prayers is obligatory and it stipulates the performance at mosques, which is not the case for other prayers. So we shall start with Friday, and we'll follow the safety controls, which will be announced by the Ministry of Awqaf. And the instructions will have all the details that we cannot discuss now, but I'd like to point out that the preventive measures are the thing that made us suspend performance of prayers at mosques. And when we resume the performance of prayers, we will make sure that we preserve the public safety. We want our mosques to continue to be safe spaces rather than hotspots for infections. And I would like to urge anybody who has a medical condition, elderly people above 50, those who have pre-existing medical conditions, please avoid coming to the mosques. According to jurist scholars, the Friday prayers is not obligatory for people who are ill or who are on travel or who are afraid of getting ill, and for women. So we hope that everybody will report to the mosque on Friday, complying with these measures. The prayers will be in the mosques and also in the yards around them. We'll keep physical distances between worshippers, and this means that we will need more space. Mosques in which Friday prayers will be performed are the ones that have adjacent yards. We count on your sense of judgments and the responsibility of worshippers. We urge people to come to the mosque carrying their own prayers mat, wearing their masks, and complying with all preventive measures. Again, if you are symptomatic, or if you have any pre-existing medical condition, and if you are old, please do, or if you are old, do not report to the mosque, because in this case, the Friday prayers at mosque is not an obligation for you. This is something that is very well known among scholars. And as I said, the performance of Friday prayers is the first step. We'll see how things evolve down the line, and then we will resume performance of other prayers at mosques in order to bring light to our mosques again. And as much as we are keen on resuming the performance of prayers at mosques, we are also keen on safeguarding the health and safety of everybody. And we hope that everybody will take care of their health and safety. When we meet at mosques, we do not want to have gatherings and behaviors such as handshaking and kisses. The preach is going to be 10 minutes only. We'll comply with all preventive measures, and thank you very much. And we shall announce the measures. The Minister of Awqaf is going to instruct imams and will give them the instructions related to public safety. Yes, such instructions will be circulated among imams. And of course, measures will be taken according to the specificities of mosques. Some mosques will not have carpets. In any case, we'd like worshippers to come bringing their own prayer mats. Bring it, use it, take it home. And then we'll issue the rest of the instructions related to praying at mosques. Good afternoon. In the beginning, I'd like to congratulate the leadership of this country, His Majesty the King, and the government, and all of our Muslim brothers on the occasion of Eid al-Fitr. And I would like also to congratulate everybody on the occasion of the Day of Independence. And today we have the occasion of Ascension Thursday at church. So, kul aam wa antum bi khair, and happy Ascension Thursday to our Christian brothers. I would like to thank the government, especially the Ministry of Health, for the great efforts that they have been exerting. And these are, in fact, the efforts that have helped us through this and come to this stage now. We're announcing the good news about reopening mosques and churches, so the children of God will resume their relation with God. They pursued it when they were at home and at houses, but now they will resume it at the houses of God. I'd like to thank all security departments, the Arab Army, and all institutions that have been working hard until we arrived at this stage. Our country has achieved things that have not been achieved by great countries and well-advanced countries. We thank all staff at all state departments. I personally believe in the blessings of God, especially in this holy area. God has been helping us through this, and it is now our responsibility to maintain and preserve the achievement that we've made so far. It is our responsibility to maintain it and to keep our churches and mosques open. And this requires that all of us act responsibly. Sunday, June the 7th, will be the first day for performance of prayers, for the Mass, I mean. We will open the churches, and we have always been keen on having everybody. But if you are symptomatic, if you have any symptom, do not report to the church. If you feel any symptom like fever or any other symptom that we all know what these symptoms are. If this is the case, do not report to the church. Don't put yourself at risk. Don't put your brothers at risk. And don't and we'd like to ask the elderly, at least for now, help us and stay at home so we can ensure that safety is well preserved at churches. We will apply physical distances between worshippers. We'll follow all preventive measures. And in our turn, we're going to have a meeting. The church's council is going to have a meeting on Saturday afternoon discussing to discuss all the preventive measures to be followed throughout the churches in the kingdom. This will be shared with our brothers through the priests in churches. So all our children, our brothers would know what to do in order to make sure that we maintain this great achievement that we've made so far, and to make sure that we're not going to regress. This is our responsibility. Again, I thank the government, the Ministry of Health, and all the medical staff. Thanks for the excellent efforts you've been exerting. God bless you. May God protect you. May God give you the blessing and the power that helps you pursue this endeavor. Every believing heart has you in their prayers. Thank you very much. In the name of God, most merciful, most compassionate, today we had 8 cases tested who tested positive for COVID-19 to make the number 728. The cases are distributed as follows. 2 are for lorry drivers at Al Amiri border post. 1 of them is Jordanian, and he was transferred to Prince Hamza Hospital. 6 cases for Jordanians coming from abroad, from Russia. And we also have 11 cases of recovery, making the total number of recoveries 497. And we have 162 patients under treatment. And I'd like to point out that the discrepancy here is because of the fact that foreign lorry drivers are tested on the Jordanian territories. However, they are not admitted into the Jordanian hospitals. We follow the protocol and deport them. Sometimes there will be a child in the company of their parents in hospital, and when we test them and they test positive, it would be a matter of how and where to categorize them. At the end of the day, our figures are very accurate. There were 3,100 tests that we conducted. As you can see, we're scaling up, and tomorrow the number of tests would also increase. I'd like to stress that the Jordanian citizens did not suffer from the illness as such. They suffered from the lockdown and from the economic burden that followed to that. What we're seeing in other countries, however, in the region and in the whole world, we see that the figures and numbers they have are very high, scary in fact, and there are so many cases. Their hospitals are packed and they cannot accommodate the incoming patients and the huge number of patients they're receiving. And therefore, I'd like to stress that this is a blessing. And thanks to the leadership of His Majesty, the King, we have come to this day when we reopen the houses of God, and this in fact means that we all should act responsibility. Opening more industries means that we shift the responsibility to individuals, and it is our responsibility to maintain this achievement. You know that Jordan has been ranked #1 um, among the countries which were best to deal with the pandemic. And the difference between our rank and the country that ranks next is 800,000 votes. This is a significant difference thanks to the leadership and the compliance of citizens. We need to continue complying with all of the preventive measures. Put your masks, wash your hands, use sanitizers, avoid gatherings. And now we're reopening our churches and mosques. They shouldn't become hotspots for infections. In one country, Germany, I think there were 180 cases of infection spread at one of the houses of God. We don't want to be a reason behind closing any place of worship. Thank you very much. May God bless you. Before I give the floor to our colleagues, I'd like to answer this question. It's from Madar As-Sa'a. It's about the time when the odd-even scheme for car use will be repealed. We've answered this before, and also a question about reducing the curfew hours. Again, there is a list of decisions that is being considered now, including the use of odd-even scheme for private vehicles, the reduction of curfew hours, and so on. All of these are being considered over this week, maybe the week after, and we will announce the decisions and announce them once we take them. And I would like to ask my colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, do we have one lady? No, two ladies. Okay, may I ask you please to start with introducing your name, and the news agency and the media outlet you come from. One question, please. So we have time for everybody to ask. And please let your question be about the topic of this press conference. Muad Lahnati from Al Mamlaka. My question is about the random testing. Are they being conducted in all governorates? Have you suspended the random testing in certain governorates, and how do you distribute them? The random testing was suspended only when the repatriates arrived in the first stage, on the first day, and when they were released, because they were too many and we need to give them the priority. Therefore, we suspended the random testing for 2 days. And now, no, now today there is a comprehensive lockdown. We are following the we are conducting random testing, especially for the contacts. We test them twice. The distribution of random testing is as per certain indicators, and the random testing is proportional to some variables. We conduct random testing that is targeted. For example, targeting contacts, certain people at hospital who work at hospitals, people who work at banks, medical staff. So while it is random, but it is more of targeted. We don't stop people on streets and test them. We have the tests targeted in order for the results to be epidemiologically indicative. Shadi Zinati from Jafra News. I have one question. Okay, it's unfair, but I'll be quick in asking this question. It's a question of two folds. May I fool the government here? As for the Jordanians stranded abroad, we have checked with all government agencies, but there seems to be no answer. There are people who desperate, they are stranded abroad and they cannot afford the cost of repatriation. The government mentioned that it's going to pay the expenses in lieu of those who cannot afford them. You did not define the category of those who cannot afford. And have you repatriated anybody at the government's expense? Now, as for the bread subsidies, the government did not issue any announcement in this regard, and the matter has not been decided. And I've heard that there are medical staff members that are going to be sent to help Gulf countries for 6 months, 300 of them. How correct is that? Again, I say, please, we only allow one question for every journalist. And this is a live press conference. Satellite channels have other programs to air. As for your question in relation to the Jordanians stranded abroad, the government did not spare any efforts in repatriating them. You know, the capacity of hotels, our capacity of our hotel capacity is for 3,000. We started to scale up the capacities, and we're taking other measures in order to scale up the capacity of hotels and for quarantines, and we're going to designate more places in order to accommodate repatriates coming from Gulf countries by car, or those coming from Egypt by sea, those who cannot afford it. As for those who cannot afford it, unfortunately, till the date, there hasn't been any budgetary allocations for this, to the best of my knowledge, but there could be. This could be examined and discussed later, and we will discuss it with the Prime Minister at the Ministers' Council and with the crisis cell. As for the bread subsidy, as mentioned by the Prime Minister and by the Minister of Social Development, we have priorities now. There are families of the daily wagers who lost their livelihoods, and therefore the priority of bread subsidy has become second to other priorities. And now the focus is on this competing priority. The Minister of Social Development, however, can explain this better than me, but the point is that priorities have changed. There are 300 staff members that are going to be sent to help friendly countries. Yes, we receive many requests from friendly countries. We consider some of them. We have always stood by our brothers and friends, and we thank God we have the capacity to help all our Arab brothers at the end of the day. However, this is a political decision that is not for me to take, but the bottom line is that we're ready to help every brother who is in need. There are many volunteers. I'm not only talking about the staff of the Ministry of Health. There are so many volunteers who are ready to help, and this is the nature of Jordanians. We have daily updates, and we respond to your questions on daily basis. Please, let's focus our questions on the topic of this press conference. Osama Bleble from Al Haqiqa Al Dawliya. My question is about reopening mosques on Fridays. The mosques are overcrowded and packed on Fridays. So why would you open them on Fridays rather than any other day? While Friday is the day when mosques will get packed. Can the government control this situation? And do we consider tomorrow, that is Friday, the last day of comprehensive lockdown, since you'll allow people to go out of their houses? And my other question is about the stand of Jordan from the Israeli Act. They removed the signs that delineate the Palestinian territory in the Jordan Valley, forbidding Israelis from treading into that territory. What is the stand of the government in this regard? As for daily wagers, many of them are complaining that they have not received the support the government has announced. Again, please, one question. If everybody asks 5 questions, the rest will not have the chance to ask any question. Well, why on Friday? I guess it's fatwa. On Friday, the Friday prayers have to be performed at mosques, while other prayers can be performed elsewhere. This is why we started with the Friday prayers, because it is a condition that it is performed at mosques. Other prayers can be performed elsewhere in any other place. And Friday prayers is the first step only. Do we have the capacity to control? Yes, we can. There might be violations. It could happen, but the number of these violations would be insignificant. The comprehensive lockdown, like I said in the beginning, we're going to model